Is Austria-Hungary back? Perhaps. They are the founders of the Patriots for Europe group, and there seems to be a fight for power brewing in the European Parliament. Is it back to the past or future? Or is it just a case of new elites for old? Do join me, Jan Darasz, for How We Got Here.
Since last month's elections, the far-right representation in the European Parliament has been reshaped. A majority of the former Identity and Democracy group morphed into Patriots for Europe, established by Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orbán. Consequently, the Patriots overtook another far-right force in the European Parliament, the European Conservatives and Reformers, therefore becoming the third largest group in the EP. They achieved this by attracting prominent far-right players such as Geert Wilders' Freedom Party from the Netherlands and Marine Le Pen's National Rally from France. The founding of the Patriots also ended Orbán's exile in the EP. His Fidesz party has been outside any alliance since 2021, when it left the centre-right EPP, which came close to ousting it. But when it comes to Orbán's successes, the list seems to end there. When newly elected MEPs gathered to vote on the chairman of key parliamentary committees, all 84 members of the group failed to secure a single leadership role in the 20 committees. Experts wildly expect the Patriots' influence in the European governing body to be limited. In addition to not gaining a committee position, Orbán's new faction failed in their bid for a vice presidency in the EP as well. The Green Party and the liberal Renew Europe group, though weakened in last month's elections, have joined forces with the EPP and SD to enforce the cordon sanitaire, a general term for curbing the far right. And while its representation in European structures may have increased, it seems clear that EU officials will seek to limit the influence of the far right as much as possible.
Our guest today is Dr. Małgorzata Bonikowska. She's the president of the Centre for International Relations and a professor at the Centre for Europe at the University of Warsaw. Welcome to the programme.
Thank you for having me.
Great to have you. Our subject today is this large grouping in the European Parliament, the Patriots for Europe. Could you give us an outline of who they are and what are their aims?
That's a very interesting development we are facing, because some parties on the radical right side of the political scene were able to jointly form a new group in the European Parliament. Actually, it's a combination of parties who, like Hungarian Fidesz, were in the EPP and left some years earlier, 2021, if I remember correctly. But also some parties like ANO from Czech Republic, who was earlier in ALDE, in the liberal group in the European Parliament, and also some other parties who were moving from here and there, especially basing on the Identity and Democracy group in the former European Parliament, and they were able to combine forces and create the third largest group in the European Parliament. It is an important element of the political game. What does it mean? It means, first of all, that we have a third largest group which is not in the mainstream, meaning the EPP.
Well, yes, how do you define the mainstream?
Yeah, well, as of now, the political strength of the European Parliament was based on actually two largest political groups, which now repeat in this current European Parliament, which is namely European People's Party, which is center-right, Christian Democrat parties, parties like from Poland, Platforma Obywatelska, but also PSL, so People's Party, so the center-right center. Then we have Socialists and Democrats, meaning center-left, basically, and that's again a second largest group, even if they lost a little bit of seats comparing to the previous European Parliament. And then the third one was the group of liberals. While now with Patriots of Europe, we have the third largest group, meaning conservative, radical, right parties, and also some parties which I wouldn't position even on the right side, maybe even leftist, or with at least some leftist socialistic program. And in the same time, we have still, of course, liberals, ALDE, which the group is much weaker than it used to be in the previous European Parliament, but we also have some parties who are not yet, or maybe will never be, in the Patriots of Europe group, means that the radical right is not really very united. What is the reason to create this group? The reason is to build a force into the European Parliament, which is able to speak louder than previously, but it's also a rivalry, let's put it very openly, between the radical right parties, because we have also a group of conservatives and reformers, where we have Polish PiS party,
yes,
but also Italian Fratelli d'Italia, Brothers of Italy. So I would read this as a kind of a competition within the European Parliament of parties of different political origin, let's say, coming from different political families and also coming from different countries, who are also trying to lead this kind of a new movement within the EU, which is dedicated to transform European Union from its inside, take over the European Union from the mainstream parties of center-right and liberal and socialist line towards more the right, to the right, or maybe towards really conservative traditional positions.
Is this, before we go into the ideological underpinnings of this group, of the recently published a manifesto on this, is this something that we should expect as a normal feature of democracy, this realignment of power within the European Parliament?
Yes, of course. Every single elections bring new political landscape, and of course depends on who got how many seats. And then it depends on the discussions between these political parties from all over the EU. We have 27 member states, but we have also hundreds of political parties in the EU. And then they have to somehow cooperate. They have to fit into some political program and cooperate with each other if they want to really have an important role in the European Parliament. Because alone, no one is really strong. They have to form political groups. We have very well established long-term political parties with a long history, such as CDU-CSU in Germany, such as Österreichische Volkspartei in Austria. These parties with history, they were able to form already political alliances. But we have also newcomers, parties who are relatively new, parties who were formed, let's say, in the 90s or in the 2000, like Civic Platform in Poland, it's 2001, PIS the same, 2001. And even we have political startups, parties who were actually formed in the last decade. Some of these parties are not still strong. Some of these parties are very successful and even took over the governments. So of course it impacts, it has a very strong impact on the political scene, not only in the European Parliament, but in the EU itself.
What are the key features of this particular ideology of this group? One of them was a return to Europe's Judeo-Christian traditions. Is this a radical idea?
Well,
or inaccurate idea? Surely not.
We have, as everywhere, in politics, we have many different opinions on every single issue. We have many different political positions. But yes, in the last decade, we observe a radicalization, not only of the language, but also of the political offers. Politicians also speak in a more radical way to get votes, to get electorate. And instead of having, the large mainstream, which is actually similar to each other, we were saying in the 90s, for example, on the years 2000, and parties from the right and to the left are quite similar. They are both going to the center, right? Now we are seeing something opposite happening, that, the center is weaker and then the extremes are stronger. Does
that include the left as well?
Yes, absolutely. Let's see France, for example. Yep. It's actually a strong fight between radical right and radical left. And of course, there is still the core, the center, center right, center left, moderates, liberals. But they are weaker and weaker also because these were the parties who were really governing for a long time, in Europe, in different European countries.
They just become stale and old. Is this
maybe stagnant, maybe a little bit closed, and it's not so easy, you know, to make a progress within the party, to make a career when you are a young and very kind of talented politician. Not always you can really break through the old, you know, limits of the older members. So yes, if you are an active politician within the mainstream party, you have more problems now to lead than it was earlier. I remember, for example, very well the case of the Labour Party in the UK, when the UK was already still in the EU, when Tony Blair took over with the idea of new Labour. And this was basically a new politician, a new face who was able to convince his own party that it has to change. But the change was towards the centre, actually.
Yes, they became the Conservatives.
Exactly. Well, so the UK...
And vice versa, I suppose.
Exactly. So the UK is a different case now because it's out of the EU, but within the EU we have still this problem that we have a domination of certain political leaders who are in politics. It has been many, many years, and we have domination of these parties who were in politics. It has been many, many years. And within the European Parliament they are still strong, but the newcomers in the form of new political parties which were created recently, but also new leaders, but also some of the old who joined this direction, create a new dynamics. And yes, I agree with you, basing on a very anti-elitist sentiments and also basing on the frustration of people in the EU countries who are very unhappy with what they see in their countries. It's very much to do with economic situation of many families, of the feeling that things go wrong in a wrong direction, that there are more and more inequalities within the EU countries. We think about ourselves that we are a rather wealthy continent, but still the inequalities are huge, and they are going even, you know, higher. So all this creates an atmosphere that people are not really happy with the elites. So anti-elitism is one. Second is, I think, a feeling of many people that maybe with this mainstream liberal and center-left, we went too far. We should be more conservative. We should think about our identity in Europe. We should think about our societies, our values. And of course, you mentioned Christian roots. Yes, many politicians of this right-wing parties mentioned that as well. But it's very much anti-immigrant as well.
Yes.
And anti-EU in a sense of the institutions and domination of this previous, let's say, direction the EU was going.
But hasn't the mainstream elite in its own way tried to form a new identity for Europe, which was a kind of secular liberal identity?
Yes. Well, it has to click with the society. Politicians are not a closed group of elites who govern and decide for us. It's the people who support them. We have democracy, we have elections, we have different political offers. So it has to click with the people. And the thinking of the people in Europe has changed. Well, let's put it this way. In the 90s, it was really an enthusiasm also for the European project itself, because the Europeans saw it as a great time. As as a moment where the West.
Yes, no threats, peace, globalization.
Yes, exactly. The West won the Cold War. Soviet Union collapsed in 1991. So this was this feeling that there is nothing better than democracy, rule of law, openness, globalization, and also this kind of push for the others also to repeat this model. But since then, a lot of things changed. Especially people feel insecure. And there is generally instability around us and also inside the EU as well. We went through several very huge crises, starting with, first of all, in 2005, France and Holland, the Netherlands, the societies rejected the EU constitution. So there was a very clear no for the idea of creating a confederation in the EU, to change the EU into a state, federal state. So this was a rejection, and since then we are balancing between being an organization of state and being a state. We are none of them. We are much more than an organization, much less than a state.
Yes.
But in the meantime, we had crisis situations like economic crisis, especially in the Eurozone, Euro was implemented in the 90s, was invented in the 90s because of this enthusiasm and because of this going into direction of one confederation. We stopped, so Eurozone crisis happened. This was, I think, in a way, natural consequence of stopping in the middle. Then we had migration crisis, then we had pandemic, then we had, in the meantime, we had a problem with Russia and imperialistic politics of Russia taking Crimea. Then we finally had an invasion in Ukraine and war at our eastern border. So altogether, people think, okay, the world is really bad, so we have to close.
Yeah, I mean, so are you saying that the liberal ideal has had its time? It's an ideology for peace, for well-being, for free trade, and now those times around the world have gone. So
well, let's put it this way. Today, I think
has it any fuel left in its tank?
We have to use maybe new words, because today when we say left and right, or liberal even, we don't know precisely what it means anymore. When we have the party, when we say that the party is conservative or it's socialist, are we sure that these parties are really, believing in
Yes.
these ideals? 100 years ago, it was more clear. I think today the divisions, political divisions between not only the parties, the political leaders, but also the people, go around different topics, different issues, right? Also because the classical, division in capitalism is not more valid, is not more existing.
Yes.
We don't have a typical, working class.
That's gone, yes.
Yeah, exactly. So I think the question for the European Union today is really what should be the next step in this project, because that's not a project which is finalized. We are still, working on reforms, on idea of how to develop, where to go, what will be our final objective. And it's very much to do with what people think about it, not only politicians, because the politicians go also basing on the opinion polls very much into what people want.
Yes.
And that's the danger also, because in the same time, people got internet, people got social media, people started to express their views radically. So radicalization of the political debate is very much obvious.
But you can't surely say that the people should be saved from themselves.
Well, I think people need...
by an elite. I mean, sorry, if I can just finally bring our discussion together. You said a lot about the people and the wishes of the people and the elites. Isn't it a case, that, as I'm speaking to as a historian, that revolutions are done when old elites are replaced by new elites?
Well, even the
Fight
term
at the top.
elite is quite controversial. I think in the EU, we definitely need to click more with the people, because we are democratic countries. So in this case, the term elite is not very good one. Maybe I would maybe use the term leaders, or those who can really propose something and mobilize people around these ideas.
Mm-hmm.
So we don't need only leaders, we need ideas, we need solutions to very complicated problems. So in this case, we have two approaches. We have populists and we have leaders who use the emotions of people and try to fit into them, even in a very radical way, in order to manipulate with these emotions and create certain opportunity for themselves to take power, to enter into the power game, But also we have responsible leaders who try to create really answers to the issues people see. So in this case, for these leaders, populism is really useful because it can show us a lot where is the attention of people, where are the issues, where are the problems. But the question is, what answers can we provide? And if the mainstream parties are not able to see, first of all, the problems, and then work on really answers, how to solve these problems, people definitely will look for alternatives. So they will vote for somebody else.
Yes, it's still a work in progress all the time.
Yes.
Dr. Bonikowska, thank you very much for coming on to our programme.
Thank you.
So that's all we have time for today. Do join us next time for How We Got Here.